I hope you guys remember me. A long time no see. I'm back in the Gainesville apartment here, back in college. I've been pretty busy, so I haven't really made many videos, and thank you guys for being patient with me. But I woke up this morning, and I kind of wanted to make this video because I haven't talked about it at all. And I felt like it was a very interesting kind of topic to discuss because it has a lot of positives and it also has a lot of negatives, and I think that would be kind of cool to like share with you guys and get your guys' opinions on, and let's see like what we can talk about. So I'm pretty sure most of you already know that Martin Truex Jr. has been going through some sponsorship issues. Furniture Row Racing lost one of its main sponsors in 5 Hour Energy, and now they're having trouble getting that sponsor replaced to go along with Bass Pro Shops, which is already with Martin Truex Jr., and they need the 15 and 20 races that Bass Pro Shops brought. They need that to be able to run the races. And before Furniture Row Racing and Barney Visser, the owner, used to put their own Furniture Row logo on the car to basically self-fund it. But he doesn't want to do that anymore, and that's completely understandable because these rides cost so much to sponsor, and we'll get into that. But there are some positives that I actually want to take out of this. I know a lot of people look at it as a negative, and I think it's a negative too, obviously. But I've been having this new outlook basically on pretty much everything, trying to think positively, trying to think all right, how can this be for the good? And I was thinking about it, and there are actually a lot of ways that I see this being a positive. For the sport as a whole, for Truex, not so much, but for the sport as a whole, it could be a positive. So the number one positive I'm taking out of this whole situation with Martin Truex Jr. struggling for sponsorship, trying to get in a competitive ride for 2019, whether that be with the 78 team or whether that be with someone else. The positive I take out of this is it's bringing light and awareness to the business/financial aspect of NASCAR and how the model is wrong and how that can be changed. You didn't hear much about the business model in NASCAR being wrong or having any issues until the last couple of years, where it's been struggling and basically NASCAR is outpricing themselves. So now that it's bringing the awareness, and I bet the NASCAR execs already know this, but now they can work on something that will help all teams. Right now, the teams are outpriced. They're pretty much every single team in the top level of the Cup Series is losing money. The reason for that comes from the distribution of the money between NASCAR, between the teams, and between the tracks. I think many of you guys know already, the tracks gain a massive percentage of the TV revenue, which that TV revenue is amazing. It has a lot of money in it, but the tracks gain a lot of money. So the tracks are making money. Even though they're not selling out completely, they're making money because they get so much of that money from the TV revenues. Meanwhile, NASCAR themselves is all right for now, but the teams are not getting a big enough cut. And that is forcing these teams to rely so heavily on sponsorship, where really no other sport relies on it that heavily as much as NASCAR does. The whole joke of NASCAR is just paid advertising going around in circles. It's because it has been like that for many years, and it worked back in the 2000s when the financial upgoing was everything was going well, right? Everything was booming. But right now, basically, NASCAR has outpriced themselves, and they need more money for the team, so sponsorship can just decrease a little bit. According to the AP, for right now, let's say Jimmy Johnson lost his Lowe's sponsorship, so Jimmy's still searching for a title sponsor, but if Lowe's was to renew for what they've been doing, which is a full 36 race package, including the All-Star race, this would cost approximately $30 million. The approximate cost for running a Cup Series team is around that area too, so you can see that the sponsorship covers pretty much the entire cost of running a team. It's not the 100% majority, but it is very high. That sponsorship is basically what runs a Cup Series team. That's why when you see someone losing sponsorship, like Connor Daly for that incident for his dad saying something 35 years ago, that was stupid, by the way, but basically he loses his sponsorship and he's struggling now, because that's just, it's a really weird world we live in now that, something you said or something you didn't say, but something your dad said 4 decades ago gets you in trouble. Yeah, that. Back to Jimmy here for a second. Jimmy Johnson loses Lowe's, right? And they're looking for a sponsorship, and Mr. Hendrick looks like they'll be able to get sponsorship amongst multiple different sponsors, whether that be Gatorade or something like that. Gatorade runs 20 races, something. I don't think you're gonna get a 36 race sponsor anymore in today's model. It's not gonna happen. But with the Jimmy Johnson situation, with the Martin Truex Jr. situation, with teams knowing that they're losing money and sponsors basically being outpriced, this can be a pretty good positive, because this can finally raise the awareness and finally get the teams to kind of speak up up a little bit more, and to the point where it's getting like, hey, we don't even have full 40 car fields anymore. It's starting to struggle a little bit, mainly because we're outpricing ourselves. How about we cut the costs? Now, it's easy to say to cut the costs, right? NASCAR's been cutting costs for a while. But what I would recommend, and what I think NASCAR could think about, is what is in many other American sports. Now, personally for me, I don't like this kind of model in some of the sports I really like, mainly European football. But there's a reason why it works in European football, not having what I'm about to talk about. There's a reason why it works in the NBA and the NFL. There's reasons to it and reasons against it, but in NASCAR's situation, where basically they're outpricing themselves and they need to limit spending, they should introduce a cap. If we do the math, it costs currently $30 million to do a full sponsorship of a team if one sponsor wanted to pay. Now, many of these teams, let's just take William Byron, for example. You got Exalta, you have Liberty University, you have, I think you have Nationwide, not Nationwide, it has, Kelly Blue Book, I think, is on that as well. Mountain Dew can sometimes be on that car. So Team Hendrick has many sponsors that can switch cars, so Exalta can be on William Byron's car, but they could also be on Alex Bowman's car. So you have all these multiple sponsors. These sponsors could be paying $10 million probably, right? That's a good number to say. $10 million for a cup sponsorship for a certain amount of races is a good deal. That is a good deal. Now, how can you cut the costs for the teams, bring more sponsors in, and still maintain the competitive level? With the higher end teams, I'm talking Hendrick, I'm talking Gibbs, and especially Joe Gibbs, because Joe Gibbs Racing spends a lot of money. They spend over that $30 million because they have money. Do they lose money? Yeah, but they spend a lot of money. You can introduce a cap to kind of limit these top teams, SHR, Hendrick, and Gibbs, just so there's basically a point where spending just doesn't matter anymore. Once you're spending 40, you're spending 50, you're spending 60 million on R&D or testing or engine development, it becomes like, this is too much. It's becoming an arms race. It hurts the lower end teams. It raises the sponsorship money needed for running these teams or being able to profit at least. So if NASCAR can find a way to introduce a cap of, let's say, 15 to 20 million, and maybe even 10 million. I know Parker Kligerman touched on this before. If they can find a way to do that, and find a way to basically limit spending amongst the bigger teams, I think you'll see a couple things. One, you'll see competition become much greater, mainly because the spending will be evened out. You see this a lot in just NBA and NFL. Let's talk about the NFL. You can see the Seattle Seahawks get a great value, right, in all their players, but once they have to pay them, they start suffering a little bit, and then it rotates. So then the Eagles come up to the top, and whether you have that franchise, player or driver like the Patriots have with Brady, then you can stay at the top for a while. But it rotates. The competition continuously rotates. You're gonna have good battles for playoff positions, and that's because the spending is limited. You can't just go out there and buy the best players. In European soccer, you can go out there and buy the best players, and that's why you see Real Madrid and Barca and all those teams do very well. And that's kind of how it is in NASCAR for now. If you spend the money, if you're Joe Gibbs Racing, you spend the money, you spend 40, 50, 60 million, you do your best to try to get the arms race, you're going to gain a little bit of advantage, but there comes to a point where it's just, the money doesn't even matter anymore. We're talking 60, 70, 80 million. Like that, you're not going to really gain anything from that point, if that makes sense. I know I'm kind of going on like a little rant here, but not really a rant. But basically, you get to a point where the money doesn't matter. You're already the best team. So if we could limit the spending competition-wise, it will help. And it will also help for sponsorship reasons. Because if a team is only allowed to spend, let's say, 15 to 20 million, right? Then the sponsorship naturally decreases. You can still have it in a way where sponsorship runs a team, or at least funds a team, because NASCAR is so heavily reliant on sponsorship. But just decrease the cost a little bit. That will bring sponsors back. That will bring them like, okay, it doesn't cost me $30 million to sponsor for 30 races anymore. It costs me $10 million to sponsor 20 races. That's a pretty good deal. That's a good deal that these Fortune 500 companies are going to look at, and they're going to be like, that's not bad. $10 million for 20 races? I can definitely make my investment back on that. Boom, you're going to get sponsorship back pretty quickly. Sounds easy in relative, just talking about it. A little bit more complicated to cut the cost that much, but that's what I think NASCAR should really try doing with their new Gen 7 car coming, whatever it comes, in like 5-6 years, whenever that happens. But naturally, just try to basically cap these teams. Like, listen, these cars cost a certain amount of money to build. After that point, just stop. You don't need to invest so heavily in R&D. You don't need to invest so heavily in these areas to become, that much greater. Just cap them so they can't spend that much money, and that will kind of help the sponsorship issues for what's happening to Truex. Hopefully I could talk in detail about that and kind of figure it out. So back to Martin Truex Jr., his situation is kind of bringing this to light, right? Sponsorship, it's just too much now. You're seeing a lot of articles, whether it be Forbes, whether it be the AP, talking about the sponsorship issues because the reigning Cup champion is having the issues. This could be a positive for Truex still. There's many rumors. I'm not going to touch on all of them. The first rumor was just ridiculous. I didn't think it was ever going to come true. That's why I didn't comment on it. Was that KBM, Kyle Busch Motorsports, would basically come up to the Cup Series, field Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch, and Truex would then go to SHR, I think, or Joe Gibbs, one of those two. He'd replace Kyle Busch in the 18. That one was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous rumor that started on the Reddit, and I don't understand why that got steam. That was just dumb. I mean, Kyle Busch Motorsports was in the Xfinity Series a few years ago, and then they closed shop. Like, they're not going to go from trucks to Cup, field, all this. Anyways, that was the first rumor. Kind of crazy, right? And the second rumor comes up with Truex and Furniture Row Racing might having to be bought out by, let's say, GMS. And that was going to be weird because then they'd have an affiliation with Joe Gibbs maybe. GMS would come in, switch to Toyota and all that. That one was a little bit more likely. That was possible. But then those talks apparently broke down, according to Adam Stern. And then the third rumor that's been coming lately about Truex is going to Joe Gibbs, but not the 18 car, maybe going to the 19 car and removing Daniel Suarez out of that situation. Now, I don't know Daniel Suarez's contract information. I'm not really sure about whether he's on a contract year or not. I think he's on some sort of a contract year, meaning he technically is obliged to run for Joe Gibbs in 2019, but I think there's a deal in there that Joe Gibbs can have like an option to remove Suarez. I'm not exactly sure about that, but he could go to the 19 of Suarez's ride. Suarez then has to find a ride, whether that be at the Levine Family Racing in the 95 where Casey Kane's retiring, or go to Kurt Busch's ride in the 41, and Kurt Busch might go to Ganassi or wherever he goes, RCR or wherever it might be. That is the most likely rumor for now. Unfortunately, the way I'm seeing it, I don't think Truex is going to be at the 78 next year. I think Furniture Row Racing has all but basically given up the sponsorship shirts. They're still going to look, but I think it's too hard with, like I said earlier, the money that they have to ask for a sponsor for a certain amount of races. Let's say they need 15 races, but it's going to cost $10 to $15 million, not enough of a benefit for the investment there. So gonna be difficult there. I think Truex, most likely right now, I think he will be at Joe Gibbs. I kind of feel sad for Daniel Suarez if it does happen that he gets kicked out of the 19 ride. But right now, if I had to put my money on it, I would say definitely that Truex would be in the 19 car at Joe Gibbs Racing. But looking at the positive side, like I said, this just to wrap up the video real quick. I'm really glad that this is bringing up that awareness that is needed on the sponsorship side, and maybe like, hey, we can make a business decision here to find a way to get these teams to stop spending so much money, so it stops ending up being an arms race basically. And that can increase competition, that can increase the likelihood that guys like Kevin Harvick or Clint Boyer or Chase Elliott's never going to lose sponsorship, but like Alex Bowman, whatever happens to in the future 5 years from now, that these drivers can secure sponsorships for their teams and all that stuff, and the teams will be secure because the cost just wouldn't be as high. So hopefully that is what happens, and hopefully as well Jimmy Johnson gets a sponsor. You know, we're getting close to the end of the year, and Jimmy hasn't announced his sponsor as yet as well. But comment down below what you think. It's my first time really talking about this, so I thought, it'd make for a cool video. It is kind of intriguing, this whole kind of can Jimmy Johnson and Martin Truex Jr., two of the most popular drivers in the sport. Truex the defending champion, Jimmy is freaking probably the GOAT. If they can get sponsorship, so that'll be very interesting. If you guys like the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Comment down below, like I said, what are your thoughts on this whole situation that be with sponsorship and Truex and Jimmy and the whole kind of business model that it is? Would a cap space work? I want you guys to tell me, would it work or wouldn't? In my opinion, I think it would. If NASCAR can regulate it, if they could find a way to cut the cost and just the natural cost of the sport, and put a cap there, I think it would work. But it's up to them. So let me know if you think that would work. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Hope you're having a great day. And peace out.